Hello, my name is Christian. I'm an Azure consultant with Visual. In this video, I'm going to talk about Azure Virtual Desktop, also known as AVD, or previously Windows Virtual Desktop, or WVD. I'll be looking at what AVD is, what you need to get you up and running, some design areas to consider as you prepare to implement AVD, and why you might choose to use the newer Windows 365 solution instead of AVD. We'll also look at a quick live demonstration of setting up Azure Virtual Desktop. First off, what is Azure Virtual Desktop? Well, Azure Virtual Desktop is a desktop as a service solution. This means that you aren't buying laptops or desktops for your users. You provision virtual desktops hosted on cloud resources. Different providers have different offerings, such as workspaces on Amazon Web Services. AVD is Microsoft's solution. When using AVD, we no longer know or care about the exact specification of the underlying physical hardware, which means that the device the end user is working on doesn't matter either. Users can connect to AVD using clients for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Android, or iOS, or any modern browser. And regardless of their device, they'll be accessing the same corporate desktop interface they would be used to if working on a corporate provided device. So why would you want to use Azure Virtual Desktop? Well, common reasons for moving to AVD include replacing on-premise solution, maybe due to its age or complexity. There's no need to set up or configure gateway servers, connection brokers, or licensing servers. Many businesses want to simplify their expenditure. Costs are incurred monthly rather than lump sums as you purchase or lease infrastructure. And you don't need to purchase sufficient capacity up front to support the maximum load. It's simple to scale up or down as needs dictate. You can even scale automatically to meet demand. As we mentioned previously, abstracting the desktop operating system means you don't have to be concerned about the underlying hardware or end user device. If your users access sensitive data, then that data remains on the remote server, reducing the chance of it being exposed on a portable device. You can provide custom desktop images if you have a particular configuration requirements, or if you have that one legacy application which requires end users to be running Windows 7. Well, good news. Windows 7 on AVD is supported and will continue to receive updates until early 2023. Though that's not far off now. Finally, you can virtualize applications individually rather than whole desktops. Just push out IE, Notepad, or Visual Studio. Sounds good, right? So how do we get up and running? If you're a small-scale operation or just want to try it out, then Microsoft provide a quick start template, which will get you up and running quickly. Just open the Azure portal. You'll need an Azure tenant and subscription. Search for and select Azure Virtual Desktop. Then choose the Getting Started option, followed by clicking on Start. Then step through the wizard. You'll need to set up users and resource groups. You'll need to decide whether users will have pooled or personal machines, how large they should be, as well as how many. Finally, you'll create a test user, then review and click Create. If you're putting together a larger scale AVD deployment, there are many areas that you need to consider. Identity and authentication. How will users be granted access? How will the AVD virtual machines connect to your existing resources? Do you have existing virtual networks in Azure? Do you need new VNets, a new subnet? Do you need to peer that new VNet with existing VNets? What traffic will be flowing to and from the AVD machines? And how will you filter it? Will your users only require connectivity to other resources in Azure? How about connectivity back to resources on-premise? Who will be accessing the solution? Who will be administering the solution? How many users will be accessing the AVD? And what type of applications will they be using? These Answers to these questions will give us an indication of the number of virtual machines and their sizing. Microsoft provides some good calculators to give us a starting point. Do your users really need a whole desktop, or could you just publish applications? In a multi-session virtual machine environment, we'll want user profiles to be available on other virtual machines. How best to go about that? Well, Microsoft recommends FS Logics, and that user profiles should be stored on a storage account with Azure file shares. When we think about the AVD solution, is it critical to users' day-to-day productivity? Does it matter if the solution goes down for a short while? Should you make use of multiple virtual machines with availability sets or availability zones? Would you benefit from any kind of scaling? Many companies will see peak activity during the 8 till 5 or 8 till 6 day, but scarcely any activity overnight. This is a good opportunity to utilize the scaling options. You only have a minimum number of machines in operation overnight and have the rest turn on automatically in the morning, ramping up as additional users come online. Finally, how will you keep your virtual machines up to date with operating system and application patches or updates? Let's move over to the portal now and have a look at setting up a simple test environment. Let's have a look in the portal at creating an AVD configuration. First off, we'll set up the host pool. As you can see, I don't currently have any host pools configured. So click on the Create Host Pool. Now, in order to speed up this video, I've already been through and completed filled out the necessary information. So again, we step through the wizard. You'll need to confirm the name, location, whether you're creating a desktop or app group, whether the host pool type is pooled or personal devices, what the load balancing algorithm is, and how many sessions you're going to allow on a VM at a time. Then we'll look at configuring the VMs themselves. Again, location, availability, infrastructure redundancy, what the image type will be, virtual machine size, how many of them you're going to create. I'd recommend, I'm going to use standard SSD because I'm demoing and testing here. I'd recommend using the premium SSD for production usage, as does Microsoft, of course. I already have a virtual network for AVD configured, and I am going to enroll my machines into Intune and Azure Active Directory. I'm also going to set up a local admin account, and I'll need to create a new workspace, which is the bit, the end user's access. I'm not going to worry about diagnostics for this purposes of this demo, nor for tags. So then we'll move on, check the details, make sure we're happy and we get a validation success, and then click create. And we'll come back in just a few moments. So we can see that my AVD configuration has been created. Here's my host pool, 2 machines, 1 application group and 1 application, which will be the desktop. I look at the application group itself. I can see the desktop group, 1 application, currently not assigned to anyone. And finally, I can see my workspace associated with my desktop application. Just for good measure, I've changed the friendly name of the workspace to Demo Workspace, and I've changed the friendly name of my application group to Desktop. Actually, let's make that Demo Desktop. Okay, and we'll see that when we log onto the client. But the first step is I need to assign this application group to a user. So I'll click Add. And there you go. You can see, found my user and added it. So let's see if that's worked. I'll go to the remote desktop client, web client. You can see my existing visual workspace. Let's renew this, refresh this, see if my demo one will appear. Hooray! My demo workspace, and here's my desktop. So if I click on this to launch it, we can see that I can allow access to local resources, clipboard, file transfer, and printer. Okay, I'm going to there we go. You can control these at the AVD level for all users. So it'll take a few moments the first time. So it will take a few moments for the first time. Exactly as you'd expect with any new virtual machine or indeed Windows machine. Here we are, Windows Desktop. We can see I've got my Office suite, my Explorer, and here we are, Windows Desktop. Let's open Notepad. Okay, nothing very exciting. We'll just save it to our Documents folder for now. Oops. So we can see I have everything I need. I'll sign out. That looks good to me. Right, let's just take this on a step. And what I'll do is I'll create a new application group. Right, so let's just take this on a step. I'll create a new application group and push out Notepad. So as you can see, I'm going to create a new application group. I'm going to add an application from the Start menu. So I'm adding an application from the Start menu. I'll just pick Notepad, save that, signed it to me. I'm going to register this application group with my main workspace. And as we can see, all is well. I shall click Create. Okay, that's been successful. I've refreshed my desktop and we can see the Notepad application. So let's launch that and log in again. And there we go. I can open my demo Notepad from earlier. Really not very exciting, but it proves that items persist. Ideally, we'd be using OneDrive to save our notes and then we'd have access to this data anywhere. So let's close that down. And the last thing I wanted to show was in my host pool. I have those two virtual machines and they've automatically been numbered 0 and 1. I think that's about covers the getting set up demo. Let's have a quick look then at Windows 365. What is it? Well, with Windows 365, you deploy cloud PCs, which is really just a fluffier name for virtual desktop. The Windows 365 service is not designed to replace AVD, more to act as a complement to it. Really, it's aimed at customers who either don't have the technical resources to set up, configure, and manage AVD, or who don't have any Azure configuration at all, and maybe don't want it. With Windows 365, you have less control, but the setup and configuration is much easier. Cost is charged at a fixed amount per user, rather than being consumption-based like with AVD, which means that pricing is more predictable, but correspondingly there are fewer opportunities for cost optimization. There is no difference between the end-user experience for Windows 365 or AVD. After all, the virtual machines are performing exactly the same function. The difference comes really in the features, management, and pricing options available. Windows 365 offers Windows 10 or Windows 11 only. There's no opportunity for Windows 7 or server operating systems, but I think that's okay and will cover most bases. Only full desktops are available. There's no ability to publish individual applications. Again, I think for most use cases, this is probably fine. Administration of your cloud PCs is carried out through Intune, if at all. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. Pricing is per user subscription, and there are fixed sizing options. There are two editions of Windows 365. Windows 365 Business, which is a straightforward cloud PC, Windows 10 or 11 plus the Office suite. Use it and manage it like an individual computer. You don't need an Azure subscription or get any connectivity to on-premise resources. Windows 365 for Enterprise, on the other hand, does offer more flexibility. It requires an Azure subscription and E3 license, but you can integrate it with your existing Azure virtual network. You can also create custom images, install applications onto the VM with Intune. In terms of cost, there's no difference between the expected monthly pricing for Windows 365 Business versus Enterprise. It's really just about the added functionality of Intune for Enterprise. With the Business Edition, the only additional cost you may incur is outbound data transfer, for example, uploading a large video to YouTube. With the Enterprise Edition, with VMs injecting into your existing VNets, you also have the potential data transfer costs you would for any machine in the cloud, as well as licensing costs. So which should we choose? Well, it comes down to your technical requirements and the complexity of your environment, your ability to deal with management overheads of AVD, as well as their associated costs. If you're interested in personal desktops for users, or a solution which doesn't require much, if any, maintenance, then Windows 365 is definitely an option worth considering. If you have a more complex environment, if you need more control over every aspect of the configuration, if you share desktops or apps and want the ability to scale up and down to optimize for costs, then AVD is almost certainly a better bet. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to this video. I hope you found it useful. Until next time.